So welcome
Thank you.
everyone. Welcome everyone today to our Lunch and Learn, June 20th Lunch and Learn on the benefits of cloud server hosting your Sage 300 solution. And I'm very happy to have Philip Hicks from Strategic Online Services in Edmonton, Alberta on the line with us. Philip and Strategic Online Services, or SOS as we know them, is our partner for hosting Sage 300 and other systems for clients that do not want to manage and procure their own server hardware and want to have reliable backups and access from anywhere on industry-leading technology with speed and reliability second to none. So Phil's going to be reviewing today some of the benefits and features of cloud hosting your Sage 300. Should take about 25, 30 minutes, Phil, I think, to run through the presentation today, and then we'll ask you to hold all questions to the end. If you can just drop the questions in the chat window, we'll address them when Phil's done his presentation. But I'm going to hand the baton over to you, Phil. Is that okay? Make you the presenter.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much, Bill.
All right, just one moment. I'll make Philip the presenter.
Very good.
I see your screen, so that's great.
Excellent. Very good. Just move this to here, and away we go. Excellent. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Philip Hicks. I work with Strategic Online Services, and we specialise in providing hosting for Sage 300. For today, what we'll be covering off, just a little bit of background. We're then going to go in and talk about understanding a Sage 300 setup, what some of the common challenges are that we experience with on-premise setups. And then we're going to have a look at the cloud server hosting model that we have and the return on investment, comparing that to on-premise deployments versus our hosting. And then talking about the next steps around how simple it is to transition across from an on-premise solution onto our hosting for Sage 300. So just a little bit of background about Strategic Online Services. We started providing hosting for Sage 300 back in 1999. So we're now into our 18th, 19th year of business providing hosting. We specialize in hosting Sage 300, or what was formerly known as ACPAC. We take care of the payroll hosting and all third-party applications, including Office and other business applications that you may need. The value that we deliver to our customers is geared around reducing your Sage 300 support costs, hardware costs, server support costs, and at the same time extending the life of existing desktop hardware. So I'll just run through some examples there first. Server hardware, let's think about that. If you need to buy a 5 or 10, let's say you've got 5 or 10 people running on Sage 300, and you buy hardware that goes on-premise, as part of the considerations for buying that hardware, you need to think forward a year, 2, 3 years down the track, and you may invest in additional RAM, storage, and allowing for growth. And you have to spend all of that money up front. And we really don't know necessarily in 1, 2, 3 years exactly what our requirements may be. So it's a little bit of a guessing game, and quite often you spend additional money up front on hardware and infrastructure just in case you have some growth there to allow for that. On top of that, when you've got the on-premise hardware for your servers, you also need to then consider what kind of support costs you have from an IT provider. So if they have to come on-premise to do hardware configurations, setups, setting up all your backup and configurations, there's all these additional ongoing costs that you actually incur with on-premise servers. With Sage 300 support costs as well, we've been doing a lot of work with DNA and Will's team there. And what it allows us to do is for each of the consultants to work within DNA, they have instant access to every single Sage 300 server that's hosted by SOS for their clients. So rather than having to drive out on site and then talk to your IT and work out what conflicting applications on the network, or who accidentally installed something over the top of another application on the server on the weekend, all of those types of problems disappear. So what that allows organizations like DNA to do is to focus more of their time on providing better financial reporting, additional training into new products and features, and expanding and getting better utilization out of your software, rather than having to navigate on-premise technical issues that come up with on-site servers. And then just talking about extending the life of existing desktop hardware, when we actually host your Sage 300, there's no software installed on your local machine or on your local network. So it's a simple internet connection connects across to our hosted server. And when you're logging in there, what that means is all of the hard work and processing is being done on our servers. So your local desktop and screen and keyboard and those types of things, you can actually extend the life of those. You're not having to replace them every 1, 2, 3, 4 years to get faster processing and RAM, because there is no actual requirements for software to be installed on your local desktops as well. We've got a whole bunch of customers across Canada, ranging from really small to very large corporates that use us for hosting Sage 300, and happy to provide those references as we go through. So just rehashing on some of those common challenges I was just speaking out before, the cost of the on-premise server, maintaining those costs, and then also similar things like if you're doing on-site work to maintain Sage 300 and doing service packs and updates, if you're having to have consultants to come out and do that work and then coordinate it with an IT manager to give permissions and all that type of stuff, it becomes quite timely and costly in doing those types of things. So it really does help to streamline all of that. And at the same time, if you've got third-party applications running, we guarantee every time you open an application on our hosted server, it'll work every single time. Why? Because it's a pristine environment where there's no other applications that would be installed that would conflict with the operating or the running of Sage 300 at any particular point in time. So we've actually done up a return on investment calculator here that I'm just going to bring up, and we'll have a look through, and I'll just zoom in on this so we can get a better idea. So we have a look at here. What I've done is I've said, look, if you want to run on an on-premise server, I've broken it down. If you have 3, 5, 10, all the way up to 25 desktops running Sage 300 in a local environment. We then have all the different components for all the different elements that you require, from RAM, CPU, storage, firewalls, antivirus, all of this type of stuff that you would have to invest in. We also then highlight the cost of things like your annual fees, and some things that people don't consider is things like floor space, because you actually need somewhere to store the server. And then in that server room, you need air conditioning, additional power. So you need to factor in all of those considerations into the real total cost of ownership for an on-premise server. At the same time, what we've done is we've got a simple pricing model, which we'll get to later, but we've actually then broken that down in the same screen here, so we can see what the annual fees for maintaining and implementing the systems would be. And what we have here is, as an example, for the total first year costs of an on-premise server, and then we break that down over a 3-year period, we're looking for even a simple 3-user or 5-user deployment being $27,000 to $32,000 over a 3-year period. In comparison to simplifying it through SOS, our model is straightforward on a per user basis per month. We have a total cost structure there over a 3-year period. And at the low end here, we can see that the return on investment for a 3 to 5 user hosted environment is somewhere between 54 to 65% cheaper and more affordable to run in a hosted environment. So not only do you get the cost savings, you get a whole lot less headaches because the support is far more seamless, and you're not having to worry about on-premise servers and conflicting applications and IT people saying one thing and doing another. This really simplifies it and gets you a nice, easy to use, manage pricing model, and the costs speak for themselves. And I'm happy to share that through Will to each of you who are attending today to have a look at those cost breakdowns, to look at those return on investments from doing an on-premise versus a hosting server solution that we have through SOS. So the solution from us, straightforward. We have an SOS cloud-based server. We run Sage 300, all third-party applications. And the simplicity of this is simply from your desktop, you would have access to run a remote desktop connection, which would open up to your own private server through SOS. And we'd have all your applications loaded, whether you're running Sage 3 or any other third-party applications. And then you can go straight in and commence your processing. It connects in with all your local printers. And the beauty of this is not only can you use it from your on-premise location, you can use this from anywhere in the world that you have access to the internet. So you've got complete mobility. And at the same time, some of you may have experienced using web-based applications in the past where you're using things like Chrome, Internet Explorer, Edge. And some software applications will work better in some browsers than others. The nice thing about having a hosted solution through a remote desktop connection is you eliminate all of those browser issues. So you come straight through over a web connection. You've got full access to a full desktop and all your Sage 300 applications running through here. So transitioning across is really straightforward, and I'll just bring this back up onto the right screen here. We pre-install all of your applications. We take a backup of your data, and you choose when to transition that across. We load up all your data onto the cloud server, and literally, if we schedule it correctly, you can be up and running within a matter of minutes. So we have had a number of clients that we've worked with DNA, where people have had some viruses or crypto locker on their servers, and they've been able to take a backup of their Sage 300 data, and we've had that literally up and running and back and processing within less than 24 hours. So the transition is really simple to move from an on-premise server across into a hosted environment using Sage 300. Our pricing structure is based on the following. We have a cost of $91 per concurrent user per month. Now, I just want to touch on that concurrent user per month model. So let's say, for example, if you had two people sharing an accounts payable role, one person works Monday, Tuesday, the other works Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you're only ever paying for the one connection because they're not on at the same time. We provide the Microsoft SQL licensing and also Microsoft Excel licensing, so you can do your financial reporting. If you do have Office 365, you can bring your own licensing as long as you've got the correct version of Office 365 to run. File storage, every site gets 100 gigabytes of file storage included. If you do happen to go over 100 gigabytes, we charge $36 for every additional 100 gigabyte storage requirement that you have. Most, if not all clients that are just running Sage 300, 100 gigabytes is more than sufficient to cover that off. We do have a one-time setup fee of $1,500 at the very start to cover the service setup and commissioning and install. And you do have an option to go into a 3-year contract, which would reduce the price by about 15% on a 3-year contract. All pricing is in Canadian dollars. We're a Canadian company. All the data is resided here in Canada. All of our support staff are based here in Canada. So the nice thing for us is not only do we specialize in Sage 300, we are local to Canada in providing all that service and support work that goes with that. Just thought I'd touch on some frequently asked questions here, just in case they're going to get covered at the end of our session today. Can I use my own Office 365 licensing? Yes, you can. It must be at least Office 365 Enterprise 3 subscription or above, and we provide that link there so you can double check that. Can you use your existing Sage Microsoft SQL licensing? No, you can't. That needs to be sourced through SOS. Is it concurrent user licensing? Yes, it is, and I gave that example earlier. So that if you do have people that are job sharing, it's a great way of being able to set them up and using that. It's also a really nice way too, if you think about it, if you're going to potentially go through a growth phase in the next year or two, one of the big unknowns when you've got on-premise hardware is, will we be able to cope with the growth? And then suddenly, do we have to buy additional hardware or buy a whole new server to cope with that? With SOS, it's a simple phone call or an email. We activate an additional user, and they can literally log on the same day and start processing. And you know the exact cost per user as you increase your needs with additional users. And likewise, we can do the reverse. So if you scale backwards, you simply call up and we can adjust the monthly billing for the user count that you have with us. People also ask, what's the minimum speed or connection that we should have to connect into the servers? So we normally recommend approximately a minimum 25 meg connection or megabit per second connection for anything larger than 5 users concurrently connecting into the server. Now, at the same time, what if your internet connection should happen to drop off? Well, most people in the room will all have a mobile phone, and on that mobile phone, they would have a data connection. You can simply tether your laptop back to your mobile phone and you're up and processing straight away. So if your local internet happens to drop out on site, you can literally keep processing within a matter of seconds by simply switching your connection across to your mobile phone. Some other frequently asked questions that come up, how many applications can we install on the server? So that is unlimited. So it's not restricted by the number of modules or other applications that you have. It's really straightforward there. Do we charge for additional applications? No, we don't. Our pricing model is really straightforward on the number of users that you have connected. Can we host Sage CRM? Yes, we can. And we do that for a lot of clients. And can we integrate Sage CRM, Sage 300 and Outlook? Yes, we can do all of the above. And the other really nice thing about doing that integration is the stability that we get for our clients, because it's in a pristine managed server environment, is really excellent for those clients that are running all three of those applications. Can you pay by credit card or debit card? Yes, you've got a choice of both. Do you get a full desktop experience? Yes, you do. And then for clients that have used remote desktop connections in the past, how can we optimize the speed of printing? We have a special application now that we deploy for all servers called Print to RDP, and that at this point in time is the fastest technology that we've come across that will improve your print speeds and make that as fast as possible for the hosting experience that you get on that side. So at this particular point in time, I thought I would open it up for questions around the room for those people that are on the line as to the hosting that we provide for Sage 300.
Yeah, Phil, that's great. I've got a couple of questions here in the chat, and please, anybody that has questions, just pop them in the chat there. Any more questions? But Phil, one of them was, how do we get our current Sage 300 onto the SOS servers?
Yep. So the process for that is relatively straightforward. Obviously, we would have our pricing and a contract signed off, but the next steps from there is we work with DNA. We get a copy of your Sage 300 license keys. We transfer them across onto a dedicated SOS server that's been set up for you guys. We'll then communicate with your consultant at DNA that's looking after you and yourselves to work out what's the best cutover time. So if that's 4 a.m. on a Thursday morning or a Sunday morning, that's more than okay. We run 24/7 for that. We'll coordinate getting a copy of the data. We'll then upload that data onto the server, and then we'll provide a timing where we can then set up some training so all of your staff can get on and start processing onto the hosted server.
Yeah, and just note to that, SOS gives your DNA consultant a login, so it's not taking up one of yours when he has to do support with you. So if you're changing forms or want him to do him or her to do anything on the system, absolutely they can log in and do it, and you can still be working just like they would when they're at your office or that sort of thing. So SOS makes it very easy for us to do the ongoing support, and we find we have less calls about technical issues, none basically, when our clients are on SOS versus the non-SOS clients, where things may come up from time to time where there's been an issue and we got to do some problem determination. In a lot of cases, it leads back to something changed on the IT side or a Windows update that's caused the Sage 300 users not to be able to access. So that goes away from you having to deal with that and us having to deal with that once you go on SOS. So that's great. I have another one here, Phil. I have another company running its books on Sage 50 as well as the main companies on Sage 300. Can I do both at SOS?
Yeah, great question. So yes, you can. It doesn't change the pricing structure other than the number of people that are connecting onto the server. So we have quite a number of Sage 300 customers that have other companies that they own or operate that will run Sage 300, or they might have even other versions of accounting software that they all run off the same server. So you can provide those license keys and software applications, and we have them all installed and set up and accessible on the server. They don't conflict with each other. They all run seamlessly in the same environment. And once again, that's a great example of being able to consolidate all of your applications into one hosted environment. So you're not having to run Sage 50 on a separate laptop on premise that causes another headache. You can bring your Sage 50 and Sage 300 all onto the same server.
Yeah, and you just log in and access both, right?
Yep, correct.
And actually, to that, we've worked with Phil's team in several upgrade situations where we've taken people, migrated them up from Sage 50 to Sage 300 because they wanted additional features and third-party modules to be more effective in their business. And we actually did the migration right to Phil's server, so took their Sage 50 data, put it on the server. They were continuing to access it on SOS at that time, and our consultant in the meantime was doing the Sage 300 in the background, getting that ready, migrating the data all on that server. And then when we were done and they were running on Sage 300, they could also still log into Sage 50 and look at their history, for example, and keep a backup for 7 current plus 6 years back as required by Revenue Canada. So it made a very seamless transition as well, eh, Phil?
Yes, it did. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a really good example.
And speaking of backups, I had a question here. What about if I want to keep a copy of my Sage 300 data myself? So I guess the question is more, can I get a dump of my database and store it somewhere, wherever I store it in a, put it in a safety deposit box or on another system just for redundancy?
Yeah, great question there. So simple answer is yes, you can take a copy of your data at any time. So you can have an offline copy as a backup. Speaking in general about backups, we take daily incremental backups of our entire server or our entire network setup. So what does that mean for someone like yourself if you're hosting with us? And let's say, for instance, you had a user that got 3 warning messages and they were accessing a site that they shouldn't have been, or they downloaded or opened a file because it got sent through to your inbox via email and you thought it was an invoice and it wasn't. And our system warned the user 3 times, look, this is CryptoLocker, please don't open it. And they still chose to open it. And let's say that locked up your server and you had the ransomware and you had to pay a fee. Well, the nice thing for us is we take those daily incremental backups, a simple phone call to our team, we restore from the night before, and you're back up and running and processing. So we take daily backups off-site. For all of the work that we do, we have a full redundant infrastructure so that if our primary site ever went down, we've got the failover site that we activate and you can keep operating as per normal.
All right, great. Thanks, Phil. I have one more here in the chat. It said, which version of Office 365 worked on SOS? Because I already have one at my office, but I need to check the version.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just go back down to that slide so we can check that. So I make sure I get the right one here. So it's E3 is the subscription that you're looking for. And this is the website that you can go to double check your different business plans that are available. So off the top of my head, typically the Enterprise 3 subscription or E3 subscription or above, you're paying around $20 to $25 Canadian per user per month for that Office subscription. If you have that available and you're currently using that, it's really straightforward. We can set it up on the server and you can keep processing as per normal. If you don't have that level of subscription, it's really straightforward to upgrade your current subscription to that level, and then you can use the licensing both on this server and on your local PC at home or the office, etc.
Right. Okay. If they don't have an Office 365 subscription, they need the Excel to run our financial reports in Sage 300 as an example, and you may need, depending on how we set up the emailing out of the system, usually we just email through an SMTP server redirect, I think, so they don't necessarily need Outlook on the server. But the reason, Phil,
right.
We've talked about it before, this wasn't a question, but maybe we'll just reiterate, the reason why you can't upload your desktop installed version of Microsoft Office 2016 or something is a limitation that Microsoft puts on you as a hosting company, correct?
That's correct. So Microsoft audit us every single month and double check all the licensing that is allowed in a hosting environment. And the only licensing that's allowed from an Office 365 perspective is the E3 subscriptions and above. So if we have your software on the server and it's not up to the right level, we get charged that every single month from Microsoft. So if you don't have that level of subscription and you just want to run the financial reporter, we can provide Excel through Microsoft for $10.50 per user per month if you don't have the Office 365 subscription.
Yeah. And I mean, it's, either way, it's very easy to use. And, on the SQL side, Phil mentioned that you have to, for the same reasons, you have to use their SQL price there. If for anybody that already pays for SQL through Sage, we would just deactivate that license and you wouldn't get charged for that anymore from the Sage side. So it's basically a $0 switch. You just stop paying on the Sage side on your subscription and move it over to Phil's side, and so you're not paying double. So that makes it easy, and that's what we've done for those clients that had that issue. And from our perspective, depending on the size of your database and everything, it is depending. And if we're doing an upgrade, so in a lot of cases, we've had clients that were on an older server, so like 2012, 2014, 2016 versions of Sage 300. And when we went to SOS, it was just easy to do the upgrade and go to 2019 because they were licensed for it anyway. but their server may not have supported that version, or they just hadn't got around to doing it. So it makes it very easy. If we're doing an upgrade, the time's a little longer. If it's a relatively simple, just dump from one version to the same version, it can be a matter of a day or less, and you're, like Phil said, a couple of hours, and you're just not able to log into the system, and then you're right back in maybe, the next morning, or later that morning if we start early, that sort of thing. So it makes it very simple from our side, because we get everything in place, and then it's really just a dump and load, right, Phil?
Yep, that's correct. One of the things I just thought I'd raise as a question that other clients have asked in the past, they said, well, where do you price out things like CPU processing power and RAM and those types of things? We don't do that, specifically for the reason that most people that we work with, they're not IT experts. What do they want? They need to make sure that their Sage 300 is available, it's running, it works every time, it's fast, and it's easy to use. So what we've done within our pricing model here is we've already incorporated the CPU and RAM and those types of elements into the cost per user per month. So what we do with every client is we actually set up and configure the server to optimize the performance. Some clients will need more resources than others. That's completely fine. And we want to make sure that over the first month or two, we then go work with you and make sure that we optimize the speed and performance, so you're really happy with the level of service that you're getting. So we keep it really nice and simple, keep all the tech speak out of it, and just keep it nice and easy to understand from an end user perspective.
Yeah, and that's where your experience hosting Sage comes in. You guys are just so good at it. It's easy, so you don't have to have all that tech rigmarole in the background and all that additional costs. So it's really been great dealing with SOS. I encourage anybody who's thinking about new hardware, or not wanting to host the platform locally, or not happy with where they're hosting it today, give us a ring here at the office. I think that's pretty much all from. I don't have any more questions there. You have another minute or so. If anybody wants to put a question in the chat, I'm happy to answer. But Phil, I think I'll take control back if that's everything, right?
Yep, great. Thanks very much for having us.
Yeah, I'm just going to switch back over here. Give me a minute to show my screen, and I'll go to the end. So if anybody does have any questions, of course, on this or anything else that you've seen in our other webinars, please just call the office, ask for Mike or Will, or just give us an email, and we'll be happy to help. Excuse me. So I have recorded this session. We will be sending out an email probably later today or tomorrow, and you can review and give us a ring. So I want to just say thank you very much, Phil, and thanks everybody for being on the line with us today. And we're going to take a little hiatus from Lunch and Learns over the summer holidays, and we'll see you again in September. Thanks all.
Thanks everyone.